the stand. Now he runs. He produces a magic print. He pulls out another one. This is incredible. This is ridiculous. This is 15 out of 10 on the incredible meter. What a player. What an entertainer. Give him the medal. Give him the Delier medal.
Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast on a Wednesday, ready to rip and tear into everything that was in round 25 of the NRL Supercoach season and looking ahead to round 26. A lot of that could mean this week is your grand finals if you have made it that far. Really happy for you guys. Good luck to you all in your head-to-head grand finals. Unluckily for me, which we'll get into, I was knocked out by Corny, who you guys may or may not know from the Instagram page. But yeah, did get knocked out, which, you know, you can probably see if you're listening, if you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see why I got knocked out with my score up on screen. Of course, if you're just listening on an audio platform, this is your opportunity to head over to the YouTube channel. You can see the face cam. You can see everything that we have up on screen. Best place to be. I will also give a little bit of a note. You can probably hear it in the voice. Did lose the voice over the weekend, which is while we missed our review podcast on the Monday. It's sort of recovering, but yeah, do sound a little bit scrappy. We'll probably not have as much to touch on in this podcast as well. There's just sort of running out of things like, you know, trade plans at this end of the season. We'll look at, you know, the best trades out there, but for me, I can't really talk about trade plans now. We are very much out of them, but let's have a look at how we scored in round 25. A score of 1,260. Yeah, not ideal. Dropped us down 1,601 positions into a season rank of 6,991st. Yeah, really disappointing. You'll get to see how, you know, that all came to be. Definitely not what we want to be doing at the back end of this season. We really want to be going up in ranks. We still wanted top 1,000 as the goal. Can still get there. I'm pretty confident in. You know, I know last year I made massive strides in the last week. I think I went up like 3,000 positions in 1 week. So we can probably get there. Just need things to fall our way. A lot of restings and whatnot, which we're going to get into. A lot of teamless snoozes, which we'll talk about, and how that affects my team, how that may be affecting your teams. But yeah, you know, as we said, 1,260, it's a bit disappointing, puts us into a total score of 28,724, so still top 4%, but we want to be top 1,000 scores, or at least top 1%, so disappointing week. Let's have a look at why exactly that week came to be. Starting with the team, there's a few good things in here, which is a bit of a shame, like 129 from Harry Grant at hooker. We're cheering. We're absolutely loving that. One of his best scores of the week. As you guys can probably see right now, or you probably already know, the Storm have mass rested players, so he's not named to play this week, which, you know, we always accounted for this. We knew this was sort of going to happen. Sort of stuffs us around a little bit, but that's why we should have probably kept the trade. But happy with the sort of trades that we made last week in the end. 129 points. If he isn't to play another game for the rest of the season, pretty happy to own that and to at least get that 129 at the back end there. Jake Simpkin, our other hooker, did not play. The forward pack, front row position, Adam Fiddle-Blake 77. He's just keeps working hard. And Jack DeBellin 44. Yeah, Dragons are quite confusing with what they're doing with him. He pumps out a massive score when he's on the field, and then they just didn't put him back on. And I'm like, what's sort of going on there? So yeah, I really don't know what the go is there. Look, 44 points will take it, but I was hoping for. He looked like he was on for a 60 and just never came back onto the field. But 44, we work with it. Josh Curran, he was the late withdrawal, didn't play, and Terrell May only punched out 24 points. He didn't get on until the final 20 minutes of the game as well. So a few interesting ones going on in our front row position. You know, happy to own Adden, though we will be without him next week with the Warriors on the bye. What we do in that front row position remains to be seen. And let's have a look at the second rowers. Angus Crichton, 132. He's back to his best. Lovely. 98 from Britton Nicotar, who was insane as well. Only 42 from David Fafita, but he did go off the field for a bit with a head knock. Did come back, but yeah, 42 points not ideal. Beau Fermor, who came back into the side, didn't play him, and he scored at 88. So that was a bit of a shame that we missed out on some points there. That would have actually got me across the line in my head-to-head prelim final as well. So you know, what can you do? Wasn't really going to play, you know, rest David Fifita for him as much as I love Bo Fermor. You can't really do that. It's just you don't really see those things happening in a game, and so be it. One of the people that we did play, though, Homole Olakawatu with a reserve tag, 58 points, also a sin bin in that. He hasn't been that great, to be honest, for a fair while now in Supercoach stats, so... You know, 58 points, it's something. There's nothing wrong with it, but would have liked a bit more, and we would have got a bit more. That would have been a 70-plus score if he wasn't sent from the field, but what can you do? A lot of people own him. We all cop the same thing. Viliami Fifita, enough, did not play. Sam Walker at halfback, 68 points from him. Another game where the Roosters put on a really good score, and he didn't get too many attacking stats. So 68 points again, just at face value, pretty happy with it, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. DCE, who we brought in, not happy with this trade. Actually, look, let's be real. The last two trades that we did, I'm not overly happy with either of them. Daly Cherry Evans being one of them. You know, I think, you know, he's going to play the rest of the season, which is a big thing, but I probably wish I would have held now to move to Nicho Hynes, who we'll speak about in a little bit. Whether or not I actually had the cash to do that's a different story, but only 41 points from Daly Cherry Evans. You know, we brought him in for that Tigers matchup. And, yeah, Manly, they weren't really here for it. The only player who was Tom Trbojevic, who happened to be one of the only Manly players I didn't own. So, yeah, not the best from DCE. We'll have to see how he goes for the back end with the Bulldogs and Sharkies, I believe, to finish the season. So, two tough defensive matchups there. Hopefully he can repay the faith that I've put in him. Jai Gray was our 5'8". We played him over Jaden Campbell. It turned out to not be the best play in hindsight, but only a 14-point difference. Jai Gray punched out 45. Jaden Campbell, who, as I said, we didn't play, 59 points from him. Into our centre wing, Jesse Ramian, 92. We would have finally got that 100-plus score, but once again, he got sent from the field for a sin bin, and now he's suspended. The first game he's going to miss all season, you know, besides the Sharkies on the buys. Tough. You know, my pod would love to own him. I'm pretty sure we can cover it. I haven't fully looked through my squad, to be honest. I saw what I scored this week and then haven't looked at the squad since then. But yeah, 92 points, still really good. Just would have liked that 100-plus as well. Dominic Young, 35. Now, this is crazy because that's a 35 with a try. You know, the try was off a kick, so no line break, but what's he scoring without? That 18 points. That is abysmal. So, yeah, really interesting stuff from Dom Young. I'd like a little bit more from him there. Ruben Garrick, 61. He was our vice-captain. Didn't end up looping that. We had faith in Manly, and they really let us down. So, yeah, 61 points, not great. And Greg Marju, 38, not great as well. The Knights just do not want to attack to the left-hand side for some unknown reason. You know, I mean, it's working to the right. Fletcher Sharp scoring 1 million tries. Dane Gaggai's playing out of his mind, who we did outline as one of our pod buys last week. But I would love to see them head back to the left-hand side so Greg Marju can pick up some attacking stats. Our bench or reserve centre wings, Valentine Holmes did not play. Kayla Ito, 91 points, love that, was one of our reserves. And Casey McLean, who we didn't play, scored 21. Then our fullbacks, the captained Dylan Edwards pod play that we brought in, 56 points, doubled to 112. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? You really think goal kicking for the Panthers against the Raiders, trying to stamp their authority, seemed like a good idea. It evidently was not. The Raiders were the better team, and Dylan Edwards just didn't play all that good. He kept, you know, he got through a lot of his work, but he seemed just a step slower. Wasn't really breaking as many tackles. I mean, I don't think that really would have mattered, to be honest. It's just a shame because, you know, the other two massive gun fullbacks, your Tedesco and your Trbojevic, they both killed it, and I didn't own either. You know, in hindsight, Tedesco might have been the play, not Trbojevic. I'm still off Trbojevic. Trbojevic for the week would have been the play, but I don't like their next two matchups all that much. The big thing that worried me about the Roosters was I thought they were going to rest. But now that the Panthers have lost, that puts Roosters into second place on the ladder, which means they're now playing for a home final. They're not going to rest players. So all of that aside, I should have just brought in Tedesco, but it's all hindsight. You know, I still believed in the Panthers to really get it done against the Raiders. Didn't happen. We live with that. Not happy with him as my captain, considering, could have done Ramien's 92, Ilo's 91, Nikita's 98, Crichton's 132, Grant's 129. Like, there were a lot of other options. 56 was one of my lowest scoring players of my round, and he ended up being my captain. But that's Supercoach. That's the risk that we took as a pod play, hoping that he just, plays well for these last couple games and, repays a bit of faith in me. And, of course, our last player was Callum Ponga. 97 from him as well. We could have even captained him and had a better week and at least won my head-to-head matchup. But that's how the cookie crumbles. That's how the team lined up. Let's go a quick run through round 26, the team list changes. As I said, we're going to try and do this one quick. The throat's already not liking this whole podcast thing. And also trade section, it's going to be shorter because I can't do trades anymore. But kicking things off on the Thursday, the Cowboys take on the Storm. Now, I said I would love to rest my voice. Not going to be able to happen against the Storm here, unfortunately, because they've made mass changes. But let's speak on the Cowboys first. They're back from their bye, and I don't see any changes. Jason Tamalolo actually returns from his facial cut, and Jeremiah Nanai also returns into the starting side. For the Storm, though, lots going on here, so I'm just going to read through what they've said down here. So, the Storm have opted to rest Jerome Hughes, Harry Grant, Will Warbrick, Jack Howarth, Nick Meaney, Nelson Asofa Solomona, Josh King, Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa, Trent Liero, Tui Kamakamitha. 11 players have been rested. So Dean Eremia, Marion Seve, Young Tonamapia all join the back line. Grant Anderson goes to halfback. Christian Welch finally joins the side, as does Alec McDonald. Tyron Wishart starts at hooker, and Lazarus Vailepu will start, and Keegan Russell Smith, Tristan Powell, Ativalu Lisati all make their NRL debuts. Very Supercoach relevant for a lot of players there, particularly Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes, Eli Katoa are probably the main three that are going to be really integral, but there's definitely people out there who own Will Warbricks and Jack Howarths, Nick Meaney's, Nelson's. There's a lot that goes on there. Interesting. It's sort of one of the only teams that have gone and done this resting. They've just done so much that it really makes up for every other team, but yeah, we'll have to navigate that Storm situation as best we can. Next up, Bulldogs and Seagulls. For the Bulldogs, Stephen Crichton has been suspended for a week for that tackle on Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. That should have seen him, by the way, not sin binned. He should have been sent off for that tackle. And the refs are genuinely just, I can't put into words how bad the refereeing is at the moment, because that is ridiculous. But he is suspended. And that means Jacob Kiraz moves to centre and Jarrell Skelton comes onto the wing in their only real change. Josh Curran also returns to their bench. For the Seagulls, Tommy Talau comes back into the centres, which moves Tolatau Kula to the interchange, and Jordan Chan Kum Tong out of the squad. Matthew Lodge also gets his way onto the bench for his first game in a fair while. Corey Waddell also out suspended, but not too relevant Supercoach-wise. Next, we have the Panthers. So, Paul Alamotti and Sania Taruva come into the side for Casey McLean and Dane Laurie. Both of those two players dropping out. Not a whole lot else going on there for the Panthers. For the Rabbitohs, not a whole lot here either. Cody Walker obviously returns to the side after his concussion, and Cameron Murray was named but has unsuccessfully challenged his downgrading of his high tackle, so he's been suspended. So he's named at the moment, but wait and see who they move to lock. You'd assume it's probably Keon Kaloa-Matangi, but we don't really know. My guess is Keon to lock, Host to second row, and they'll bring up someone onto their bench. Moving on to the Eels and the Dragons. For the Eels, not a whole lot going on, nor are they particularly relevant. For the Dragons, not a whole lot going on, and nor are they particularly relevant. We keep on moving. Dolphins, nothing going on here either, at least nothing relevant. And for the Broncos, nothing going on here that is relevant either. This is quick fire. The only team that needed speaking was apparently the Storm. The Sharkies, they do get back Siosifa Talakai, who comes in a straight swap for Jesse Ramien, who is suspended, as we mentioned. Sione Katoa also comes back on the wing. Can't remember who he's replacing, though. Cannot recall. Because Sam Stone Street's still on the side. Who dropped out? Hiroti, who was the late call-up. That makes sense. Beyond that, not much. For the Warriors, Charles Nickel-Klukstad has moved to centre to cover Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who was out with concussion in their final game. And that also means Tane Tuopiki starts at fullback, and Ali Leitao also comes into the other centre position for Adam Pompey, who misses their final game. This is Sean Johnson's final game ever as well, so this is a game that I will be at. If any of you guys are at this Sharkies Warriors game, swing me a DM over on Chip and Chase, and I would love to catch up with you and have a bit of banter with you, but not too much on there either. For the Knights, they welcome back Bradman Best into the centres, which I'm hoping means some good things for Greg Marju. Hopefully he can actually get some ball on that side now. But we'll wait and see, which moves Dylan Lucas back to second row and Kai Pearce-Paul out with that pretty gnarly cut that he got on his leg. The other man that comes in is Brodie Jones, starts at second row with Tyson Frizzell dropping out of the side as well. I believe there's an injury there. For the Titans, not much going on here that I can see. Just once again, AJ Brimson is now fully out for the season. They're going to do surgery on his groin to fix that, which means Philip Sami starts at centre. And then we have the Roosters and the Raiders. Is that the final game of the round? Final game of the round, Roosters-Raiders. Michael Jennings comes into the centres for Joseph Suali'i, who was out with a neck injury, I believe that was. Brandon Smith also comes back into the side after missing last week. He comes straight in at hooker. Connor Watson also back on their bench. And there was another one that I thought happened there. Oh, Jared Warrior-Hargraves suspended again, which means Nafahu White gets onto the bench. For the Raiders, they have made seemingly no changes there. Same side that did it last week. So those are all the teamless changes. Let's have a look at trades. Now, we start things off by looking at the most popular trade ins and outs. Let's start with the most popular traded out players. Nathan Cleary, number one, makes a lot of sense. If you've kept Nathan Cleary to this point, you are probably looking to move him on to Nicho Hyne. So let's talk. No, we'll wait a bit on Nicho Hyne. He actually features in the pod buys because he's low ownership. I assume he won't be by the end of this round, but pod buys nonetheless. So Harry Grant is the second most traded out, also makes sense. Melbourne could very much rest him again next week. They've already wrapped up the minor premiership. If I was the coach, I'd just not play them. Yeah, I'd give them 2 weeks off. But maybe you want a little bit of game time coming into finals, so we'll have to see. Either way, if you need a hooker this week, selling Harry Grant makes sense. And we do outline a certain hooker option in our pod buys as well. Eli Katoa and Jerome Hughes, so 3 Storm players, all who are rested, are the second, third, and fourth most traded out. And then Api Coruscant, the 5th most traded out on the buy. Again, if you can cover him for a week, I would, but I assume the people who are trading him probably can't cover him. I'd even look to get an AE maybe. But let's look at the traded in. Number one, Jacob Liddle. Now, he's another man that we will be looking at in our pod buys. We mentioned him last week. He's absolutely killing it. So we'll talk a little bit more about him in depth if you're looking to bring in a hooker into your side. Matt Burton, the second most traded in. Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't hate it. 5/8 halfback to finish the season. Bulldogs fighting for a good position on the ladder. Don't hate it. Sam Walker third. I mean, if you didn't trade Cleary last week and you're trading to Walker now, I'd probably go to Nicho Hynes, but that's just me. Angus Crichton, the 4th most traded in. If you don't own, makes sense. And Zach Lomax, the 5th most traded in. You know how I feel about Zach Lomax. Love that trade in. Let's look at the pod buys. Here it is up on the Instagram. So once again, if you're listening on an audio platform and you can't see what we're talking about up on screen, this is over on my Instagram, the Chip and Chase podcast Instagram. So whatever you're listening to, whip out your phone, pull this up, and you can follow along with whatever I'm speaking about. But these are our best buys for round 26, point of difference players. Only the 2 rounds left, so we're just looking in the very short term and trying to get some higher upside players to help you along your tracks, starting with Jacob Liddle. Now, we spoke a little bit about high upside. He doesn't have the highest of upside, but hooker at the moment, pretty important position, and let's talk about why. A bloke we mentioned last week becomes even more appealing with Harry Grant's resting and Api Coruscant on the bye this week. Little has quietly gone about his business to be the most consistent gun hooker all season, averaging 74 points per game since round 12. Auto emergency players can be an absolute nightmare at this point of the season, so it's really important to secure your hooker role to avoid getting those low scores. And Little is all but guaranteed to play the remaining 2 games with the Dragons fighting for the 8. He's not only safe, but he has the potential to go big with the 2 relatively easy final games. Love him as a purchase. There it is. That's all set up on... Everything that was written there is what needs to be said. As I said, the stats are up on screen. Pretty important when you're looking to buy players. So once again, if you are listening, go have a look at that post. This is the stuff you want to know when buying players, not just pod players, but buying players. So give that a look in. Let's look at our next player and let's do an extended talk about him. Nicho Hynes. Prince Nicho has been named on the extended bench for the Sharks in round 26, and he could be worth the early trigger if you still own Cleary. Keep an ear out for any news on whether or not he is going to play. But he has to be considered regardless. If you need points at the back end, then getting one of the top 3 best Supercoach players at low ownership is an absolute steal. Risk versus reward. That's the thing. The Panthers play in round 3, so if you still own Cleary, you need to sell him to Nicho Hynes before the Panthers play, because otherwise he locks out despite not playing. So we don't know, whether Nicho Hynes is going to play or not, because he's only named on the extended bench. So you're going to want to keep an ear out and listen into all sort of sources on Twitter, on Instagram, all those sources that you have, or people that have those sources. Listen out so you can know whether or not he's playing. My advice, and from what I'm hearing from others, I do think he plays this round. I do think he is a late inclusion. Whether or not, that officially gets announced until the Sharks play, we won't know. You're going to have to make that decision earlier than it's going to be announced. But the thing is, if you're trading a Nathan Cleary to him, Nathan Cleary is out for the last 2 games. So if you trade him and he locks out and Nicho Hynes doesn't play this week, sucks. But he definitely plays next week. And he's the best halfback option, in Supercoach. He's one of the 3 top 5 best players in Supercoach regardless. So I would be looking to bring in Nicho Hynes if I had those trades. I, of course, don't. So it doesn't really affect me. But, if you want to really shoot yourself up those ranks, get the best players. And Nicho Hynes at currently 6% owned, obviously that'll go up a little bit. It can't go up too much. There's not too many people out there that have a plethora of trades left. So if you are one of those people who have secured those trades and you might still own Cleary, even if you don't own Cleary and you want to move on a Daly Cherry Evans or a Jerome Hughes who's been rested, Nicho Hynes I genuinely think is the best option. So worth considering, but it's going to be a risky one because you might have to pull that trigger before you know he's going to play. So keep your eyes and ears out on whether, on the news to see if he's playing or not. Let's move into our last player, Christian Tuipulotu. Another man I mentioned last week was Tuipulotu, who I really liked with the Dragons' final draw and with his solid base. I'm not entirely sure who goes massive to finish the season in the centre wing position, but you've got to think that the Dragons playing for their season throw caution to the wind, and if they do, then Christian is worth a look. Obviously, Lomax is the preferred buy, but he is substantially higher owned and more expensive. Hence why Christian Tuipulotu is at 1% ownership. So if you do want a slice of that Dragons cake, then Christian could be your man. I don't know about this one. This one's sort of a vibe pick. I just really like, players with a bit of base, which he certainly does have. He gets through his work in a game. Dragons have Eels and Raiders to finish the season. Now, Raiders have to beat the Roosters to actually play for anything. If they beat the Roosters, that final clash against the Raiders and Dragons clash, will be essentially playing for top 8 if the Dragons also beat the Eels, which you'd assume they're most likely going to. It is a strange game though. So let's bank on the fact that the Raiders probably aren't going to beat the Roosters, which puts them out of finals contention. It could then be an Eels side sitting on last on the ladder for the Dragons, followed by a Raiders side with nothing to play for in, home and that's a Dragons home game. So I would really like that for the Dragons, who still need to win both games, and they will be looking to, because it's not just the Raiders, it's also Knights and Broncos that are snapping at their heels, and the Dragons have the worst points differential. So even if they lose, they're one game ahead, but if they drop to the same amount of points, then the points differential of Knights and Broncos would put them above them. So the Dragons essentially need to win both games to finish the season. So do the Raiders, but I don't think Raiders beat the Roosters this week. So I'd say they're pretty easy matchups. I think the Dragons look to put on a bit of an attacking clinic. Yeah, sure, they do favour the right-hand side with Lomax. And, I've said it all along, Lomax is a great buy, but he's also a lot higher owned. If you want to throw a bit of caution to the wind, give Christian Tuipulotu a go. It's just a vibe pick that I really like. So, give it a go. Let's look at my trades, which, of course, we can't do here. If I were to have trades left, fairly few easy ones. I probably wouldn't have kept Daly Cherry Evans, or bought him in last week. I really sort of regret that, looking back on it. I don't fully regret the Edwards one. That one's a bit more hindsight. I'd prefer Tedesco, because now I know that the Roosters aren't going to rest. But at the time of purchasing, I assumed Roosters would rest because Panthers were pretty clear at the top. So I don't fully regret it. We'll have to see how he goes to finish the season. The Cherry Evans one, I'd love to have not done that and then got in at Nicho Hynes this week, but that's how the cookie crumbles. And the other man I'd look to sell is Harry Grant, just so I could get a slice of that Jacob Little and have a hooker to finish the season. But doesn't happen. We're going to trust in, as we said, the depth of my squad to finish it. So let's look at sit v starts to make that happen. Now, hooker, obviously, we don't have anyone. Harry Grant and Jake Simpkin both not playing. We will be copying an auto emergency this round. That's something that we spoke about with Jacob Little. Now, if you are new to Supercoach and you don't know what auto emergency is, or AE for short, it's essentially the player. If you play someone in Supercoach who doesn't play, Supercoach will give you the lowest scoring player from your non-playing players as your score for the week, but only once. So if you played 3 players who didn't play for the week, you only get 1 extra score added to you. So in this case, I can't play a hooker because there's no Grant or Simpkin. So I will get whoever's the lowest scoring player out of, Josh Curran, Terrell May, Bo Fermor, Jaden Campbell, all these sort of players that I might not be playing. So let's look at my sit v starts at the moment. The thing about this is I'm going to play Jake Simpkin over Harry Grant. Now, as we said, play isn't the right word because he won't be playing, but I'm going to put him in the starting side regardless because the Storm play on the very first game of the week. So if I want to loop, which essentially I have the shot of a free VC loop this week, I can't have Harry Grant being my non-playing player to loop because he plays in that first round. So we've put Jake Simpkin in, which allows us to VC someone like Valentine Holmes, but we'll get to captains in a bit. Because Manly, they play in the second game, so it doesn't give me too much option, but it does give me an option which Harry Grant wouldn't allow. So Jake Simpkin is currently my starting hooker. The front rowers will continue to be Adam Fanua-Blake and Jack de Belin. I'm just not sure on Josh Curran with his injury, and Terrell May after not getting on the field last week. Not really sure on them, so I would at least lock in the 40 to 50 points that de Belin can get me. Second row, we're keeping Crichton, Nikora, Fafita. Are we keeping Olakuatu? Potentially. Let's take all of our reserves off and we'll work that through in a second. Let's just focus on our starting side. Halfback, we will be starting Sam Walker again. 5'8", we'll be starting Jaden Campbell this week over Jai Gray. The Bunnies have the Panthers, unlucky. And the Titans have the Knights, who I still don't trust the Knights. So I'll give Jaden Campbell a play. Centre wing, Valentine Holmes, Dom Young, Ruben Garrick, Greg Marju. Let's maybe Marju. Kale Iro, definitely. So we'll go those guys. And then fullback, let's start Kalen Ponga this week. So now let's look at my reserves. Dylan Edwards will definitely get 1 reserve. Smack bang. Now we have 3 more to split up between essentially Greg Marju. I don't really want to play Jai Gray. So Greg Marju, Daly Cherry Evans, Bo Fermor and Humole Olakau'atu. I think Bo Fermor, probably my favourite of those. He's good for a good 60, probably gets attacking stats. Now it's between, who do I go here? Do I go Olakau'atu against the Dogs or Daly Cherry Evans against the Dogs? Or I could go both and sit Marju this week, considering they just seemingly never go to the left-hand side. But they have Bradman Best back, so maybe they go to the left. I'll play Greg Marju because fuck it, why not? And I'll give my last one to, at the moment, Olakau'atu, but every chance it goes to Daly Cherry Evans. Who knows? So that's the team. We're pretty darn happy with it because the depth of the squad is still there. Even with players like McLean and Ramian out and, Harry Grant and all that out, we have a really good side. The AE, my auto emergency will be one of Josh Curran, Terrell May, DCE, and Jai Gray. If I had to hedge my bets, I'm probably thinking Terrell May, but who really knows? So let's look at captains for the week. Now, as we mentioned, we will be looking at a VC on Valentine Holmes because that is the only game that plays before Jake Simpkin, who is my non-playing player. So it has to be a VC on Valentine Holmes, which I don't hate because, Melbourne have rested all their players. You never really want to be captaining or vice-captaining against the Storm, but in this case, I've got a bit of an exception to that rule. So a vice-captain on Valentine Holmes we work with. Anyone else, if you own a Scott Drinkwater, he's also worth a vice-captain shout there. Bulldogs and Seagulls. You can always go for Tom Trbojevic, who I don't own, but the Bulldogs, they've just got, their defense is so good. I'd be a little bit more weary of it. Yeah, I'd be a little bit more careful in doing that. But, you've got to go Tom Trbojevic every week, essentially. So, vice-captain on Tom Trbojevic is a good shout, despite the Bulldogs matchup. Panthers, Rabbitohs up next. Dylan Edwards, theoretically would be a good shout, but I don't really trust him, and I don't really trust the Panthers at the moment. But against the Bunnies, I'd expect them to turn up. Dylan Edwards is a great shout, but unfortunately my captain's going to come later in that same position, so I won't be doing it. Eels and Dragons. There's not many options here. Zach Lomax is a really good vice-captain or captain shout, but that's sort of about it in that game. Dolphins, Broncos, wouldn't be looking at anyone. Sharks, Warriors. If you are to bring in Nicho Hynes, if he is named to play and you bring him in, fantastic captain shout against the Wars, who haven't really turned up for a fair while, and the Sharkies have been playing some really great footy, so I really like the Nicho Hynes captain. Beyond that, not too many Sharkies I'd look at, and there's no Warriors I'd look at. Knights, Titans, this is where my captain will fall. I will be captaining Kalen Ponga. This one's taking place in Newcastle, so there's that little home field advantage for the Knights. He looked good last week, KP, so yeah, I'll be getting Kalen Ponga as my captain. And then the final game, we're looking at Roosters and Raiders. James Tedesco just makes the most sense there if you're looking at that. But that's my vice-captain and captain. We're looking at Valentine Holmes and Kalen Ponga as our captains. And we vice-captain and captain respectively, I should say. And that one will wrap us up. Apologies about this one. Hasn't been the best podcast, hasn't been the most entertaining, hasn't flowed the best. My mind's scattered, it's all over the place. But we're just trying to get these ones, grinding them out despite the state I'm in. But once again, thank you guys for tuning into these ones. I really do appreciate the support we've had along this entire journey. We've got one more week after this left of Supercoach. Of course, we will continue doing the normal the normal NRL content on the podcast and over on the page. So keep up with that if you guys are interested. Really appreciate that. And as I said, we've got a lot more planned for next season. So stick around with us and we'll be back much better next season. Good luck to all of you in your head-to-head grand finals this week. And thank you guys for tuning in. And I'll see you guys next time.